So, the past AEW Dynamite was the last show to take place in the Daily's place before AEW goes back on the road. And the show kicked off with a tag team match between the champs, the Young Bucks, facing off against Eddie Kingston and Penta El Zero Miedo. And this was a pretty entertaining and competitive match. All the men had experience with one another in the ring, and I think it really showed. However, one thing I didn't like were all the interferences. I think this match could have done just as well without all the other people like the Good Brothers and Frankie Kazarian. But either way, Eddie and Penta picked up the win and earned a World Tag Team title match sometime in the future. But yo, can we talk about my man's facial hair? Then we saw Christian Cage tell Jungle Boy that he was proud of him for taking Kenny Omega to the limit last week in their title match and encouraged him to go out and become the first AEW wrestler with 50 wins. Luchasaurus said that he appreciated Christian's support and that in turn Christian would have his support. And I can't help but think this is somehow going to end up with Christian turning on Jurassic Express, mainly because I felt like Christian would have gotten a championship match by now and Jungle Boy is kind of the reason why Christian didn't get one, so I guess we'll see what happens there. And then next, Tony Schiavone interviewed Ethan Page about his coffin match with Darby Allin. Basically, Ethan Page just says he's going to beat Darby Allin in this match before Sting and Darby would attack Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. And then Ethan Page said that he'll call off the match at Fyter Fest unless Darby signs a contract that says that Darby can't touch Ethan until their match. And with that, I can only imagine that there's a loophole where Ethan can touch Darby. So we'll see what happens in the build up to this Fyter Fest match. And then Jungle Boy took on the Hybrid 2's Jack Evans. And eventually Jungle Boy got the snare trap submission in and forced Jack Evans to tap out, giving him his 50th win. Although some people might say he already got his 50th win. But then the Hardy family came down and Christian Cage and Jurassic Express fought them off. Then MJF hyped up another match with Chris Jericho, where basically he said that as long as Jericho can get through his stipulations, he would give him one last match against him. So this is basically just the Cody Rhodes feud again. But I guess we'll see what Jericho will have to do because I honestly did kind of like how that whole Cody Rhodes feud played out. Then Andrade El Idolo hyped up his match with Matt Sydal at Road Rager, where he's going to make his AEW in-ring debut against him. So that should be cool to see, considering how much of a star Andrade is. Then we had Kenny Omega basically saying that after defeating Jungle Boy last week, there was nobody left in AEW to challenge him. And then the Dark Order came out and said that a guy that they had befriended, Adam Page, who was also the #1 ranked wrestler in AEW, could honestly fit the bill. And then Omega teased a match between... Wait a minute. Ethan Page hyping up a match with Darby Allin, MJF hyping up a match with Chris Jericho, Andrade El Idolo hyping up a match with Matt Sydal, and now Kenny Omega hyping up a match with Adam Page. Okay, what's going on here? Can we actually get some wrestling on this show? This is the last show you guys have at the Daily's place before you go back on the road, right? But so far, a lot of it has honestly just been hyping up matches that'll come in the future. Also, I think I'm kind of tired at this point of Kenny Omega and Adam Page. Like, these two have been linked together for so long, and they've done battle with each other and against each other so many times that honestly, I'm getting pretty tired of it. And unless this ends in Adam Page becoming the AEW World Champion after he was in the inaugural AEW World Championship match, I'm honestly not super excited to see this. Quite frankly, I think I've had enough of the Elite/Bullet Club stuff for a while, so I actually would prefer somebody completely different outside of the Bullet Club coming in to challenge for the AEW World Championship. Next, we had the TNT champion Miro facing off against Brian Pillman Jr. for the title. And I haven't mentioned this before, but while we're on the subject now, I just want to say I don't know how the TNT title is going to work going forward. Dynamite is moving to TNT's sister channel, TBS, and the new show they're coming out with in August, Rampage, is also eventually going to go to TBS after it finishes its run on TNT. And with the dark shows on YouTube, defending the TNT title is going to end up being pretty awkward. I don't know, maybe they'll end up changing the title to the TBS Championship, even if that does sound pretty hilarious and way less badass. But real quick, I also want to talk about a problem I'm noticing with AEW, and the worst part about it is how similar the problem is to WWE, which is something AEW said they steer clear from. them are the problems with WWE, but my problem with AEW is how many shows they're starting to put on. I was already kind of feeling it when they added AEW Dark Elevation, but with a second weekly show, only 2 years into the promotion's genesis, I'm afraid of where AEW is currently heading. I'm afraid they're going to make the same mistake that WWE made, where there's just so much to produce that they can't focus on making one single thing really, really good. It's essentially the problem of being spread too thin. Plus, with all these new special episodes popping up all over the place now, I'm afraid they're also going to have that problem where the special events, like the pay-per-views, don't feel special anymore because there's just so many. But anyways, back to the TNT Championship match. Miro defeated Brian Pillman to retain his title and continue his hot streak. And I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that this is the Miro we wanted to see when he came to AEW, but also I just found out that Miro's signature camel clutch submission is now called Game Over, which is kind of dorky, but obviously makes sense for his character. Then we continued the story of Team Taz and the dissension within the group. And basically at Fyter Fest on July 14th, Brian Cage will defend his FTW championship against his fellow team member Ricky Starks. And then in a women's tag team match, Britt Baker and Rebel took on Nyla Rose and Vicky Guerrero. And it was interesting to see Vicky in the ring again. And being such a good villain the way Vicky always is, it was really satisfying to see Britt lock in her lockjaw submission maneuver and make Vicky tap out. Plus, I gotta say, I really like this transition Britt has had to being a babyface because I think she just works so much better that way. I was always behind her whether she was a face or a heel anyways, but seeing her actually meant to be cheered is also really satisfying. But the segment ends with Nyla Rose powerbombing Britt through a table, which will obviously set up a feud for the women's championship between the two, which I'm pretty excited to see. And then finally, it was time for the main event where MJF took on Sammy Guevara, and I think it goes without saying that these two are obviously two of the hottest up-and-comers that this industry has to offer today. I mean, they're both just so good, and their styles just complement each other so well. A really good match, but the match ends with a bunch of interferences from the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle, which I'm not a huge fan of because I kind of want to see a good match just end cleanly, but MJF takes advantage of Shawn Spears' chair shot to pin Sammy Guevara.